I decided to name the project with the verb embracing because it reminds of a calm action, a very accepting action in regards of nature, life and death. Additionally, the building itself with its shape and positioning on the site resembles a hug, an embracing action towards nature. The sketch on the top shows the shape of the building. With its L form, it creates a separation between the busy street and city life and the calm, heaven-like space on the inside facing the green belt. I also chose this shape because of its minimal footprint, which allows nature to re-expand onto the site. As you can see on the picture on the right, Brampton is probably going to look like that just in a few years, which makes it clear how important it is to maintain as much green space as possible. Now, this roof plan shows a closer look to the building and the garden. You can clearly recognize the wooden walkways going through the garden and making it accessible not only to the residents, but also to their families and potential visitors, not excluding the possibility to make it accessible to the public one day. Taking a look at the roofs, you can recognize two major details. The first one would be the roofs being green, which makes the monolithic roofs less present and more embedded into the site. Another detail are the roof windows, which allow direct sunlight to enter the resident suites that have a north orientation. Moving to the ground floor plan, we can see here highlighted in green, let's call them the functional blocks. So since the building has a very specific function and the people that will be living and working in it have very specific needs, the first priority was for everything to work perfectly, within a limited budget of course. Without being scared of being too conventional, I first settled the more functional aspects, placing these blocks in very specific positions so that, for example, a nurse could reach every suite in the fastest time possible in case of a life or death emergency. What can also be seen are the open spaces in between the blocks, which can be used by family members, visitors and the staff in various ways. Taking a closer look, we can see the resident suite block on the right, then we have the emergency block and the more like family and kitchen area blocks up on the north and on the south. So looking at the resident suites now, you can see how they have a very specific shape. So now imagine standing inside of the building. The protruding bathrooms help to reduce the effect of having a door like a long corridor with a door next to a door next to a door, while from the outside the small niches are created and these give the residents more privacy and a small space to maybe sit on the outside and enjoy nature. This repetitiveness of having a suite next to of having suites in a row guarantees that every residence receives equal treatment, view, etc. We can also see the emergency station block placed in the middle. It helps the nurse to reach every suite in the fastest time possible. It includes a nursing station, a medical room, a storage room for medical equipment, and other rooms. Additionally, on the top, on the north side, we have some private family rooms with a small kitchen in case they stay over for a longer time. While in the south, the commercial common area kitchen is planned. Now, this sketch is trying to show what a residence suite could look like. We have the roof window, which lets direct sunlight in. We have a shading with a shading possibility, of course. The main goal, let's say, is to have a home-like character, but to let the suites be very customizable as well, since the ethnicity and country of origin of the people living there are going to vary a lot. While the first arm was more dedicated to family, the patients, and let's say being as home-like as possible, the second arm is to divide the functions dedicated to the staff, the offices, and let's say the more paperwork part of a hospice. It has one or potentially two elevators, and the parking is located on the outside on the southeast part. Interesting is the entrance area, which is a spacious 8 times 9 meter space which hosts a small reception located on the side. The space functions as a vestibule in the winter and can be opened in the summer. Interesting is how the wooden flooring from the walkways outside continues to the inside and creates the sort of connecting element. This perspective shows how it may look like with the double height ceilings, the big opening towards the garden, and the small reception on the left. The second floor of Arm 2 is also dedicated to the staff, with open space offices, lockers, changing rooms, and two multifunctional reunion spaces. The basement of the building is, well, very simple and functional. It hosts rooms like the laundry room, the more mechanical and technical HVAC system rooms. It's just, let's say, functional and structural. Now, taking a look back at Arm 1 and looking at this section cutting through a residence suite and the nursing station, it shows how the roof is slightly inclined, opening up towards the garden area while it closes down to the busy and noisy street. You can also see double floors, which allow the mechanical HVAC system, heating, cooling, etc. to be stored underneath, not to ruin the ceiling structure, which is going to be visible. The second section shows an elevation, and you can start seeing the facade. You can see how the slight kink in the facade helps to reduce the repetitive effect of, that repetitive effect, and creates the feeling of having a small space, like small separate houses next to each other, all connected throughout this green monolithic roof. What you can also recognize and start seeing are these interesting structural elements. I'm experimenting around with these type of structures, first off because they give me more open spaces without columns. Secondly, as you can see in the perspective on the right, which focuses only on structure, you can see how it divides and structures the space, from the suites fading out towards the open spaces. The section detail on the left shows the two main materials that will be used in the design, concrete and wood. We have the concrete in the foundation until 90 centimeters off the ground, and then the wood structure makes the rest of the building. The facade is made out of a clean concrete base in the bottom and a wooden slats on top. The exposed detail shows how insulation is placed in between to avoid all thermal bridging. What can also be noticed is the window in the facade sketch has rounded edges. So since round shapes are proven to be more comfortable and calming to the eye, throughout the whole project, from the ground plan to the facade to the structure and the interior furniture, round and soft shapes are used. Now, talking about materials, first off we have nature as material. So apart from the green or grass roof, I'm also planning on letting plants grow onto the facade. Then, as mentioned before, we have concrete or cement. And lastly, we have one of the main elements, which is going to be this wood, which is going to change color with time and start turning gray, making the building seem like a living organism getting older with time. So these wooden slabs will make the walkways and the facade, as well as probably the interior flooring. Now, lastly, you can take a look at the project from a 3D perspective with this model. The first picture on the left is actually pretty interesting because it shows, in an abstract way of course, how the building is connected with its surrounding and how it becomes a part of it. Landform and building have the same color, and the building stands out in a very subtle way. That wraps up my presentation, and thank you for your time and for listening.